1. Hey everybody, I'm Randy.
I'm Steve.
Welcome to Bible Over a Beer. Oh, I needed that. We are in the Judges. I was reading Judges this past week and I texted Steve and I said there's just no way we're going to be able to do the entire book in one take. There's a lot of people, a lot of places, a lot of fighting, a lot of detail. So we decided to break it in half. We're going to do chapters 1 through 12.
Yes. Adding a little bit to it, I mean, for a 21 chapter book, there's a lot of detail, which is obviously there for a reason. But man,
Yeah, I struggled trying to take notes because it was difficult to try to figure out what to leave out. But at the same time, we're hoping you're reading this with us, so we can't, we're not going to give every single detail in this. You're going to have to go through and read it yourself, but we're hoping that if you've already read it, this is going to we'll hit the key points and jog your memory. And if you haven't read it, go ahead and read it or watch this first and then read it. So,
well, as testament too, just adding, he's got 9 pages of notes, and I've got 4. Now I have smaller spacing and smaller font, but just like you said, there's a lot of it. Yeah.
Yep.
And again, this whole journey is our conversation, our cover to cover. Just as a reminder, find out about us, go to the first video and rewatch it. Again, we're not teachers. With that, let's segue into it.
yeah, let's dive in. I mean,
Dive in's a good way to say it.
Joshua's gone,
Yes, it
and
is.
they are leaderless basically for decades, a long time.
It's to the point where they made note of it. Skipping ahead just to one chapter because it's important for what you just said. After so this is basically chapter 2, verse 10. A whole nation had gathered to the ancestors. Another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. So
Right. So they were
at
told
least 10
they're
years.
supposed to be passing everything on to the next generation.
Keep
but
my words on your lips.
for some reason, it's either not getting passed along or it is, and they just don't care. They're being influenced by all the Canaanites that are around them, which they were supposed to drive out, and they didn't.
Well, so it's interesting. I wanted to add to that because what I got too, and it was brought up, and they're in the promised land. So they're not in a tent. They're not following around as a big group anymore where things are called out. This
Right.
is why Joshua really pointed out, and when Moses passed on to Joshua, and Joshua really pointed out, keep these traditions, keep these, don't intermix with the people that you just mentioned in the promised land because there's some left over. So
Right, they're going to influence you. I mean, it was all predicted. It was all set ahead of time. This is what's going to happen, but then it did, basically. So you remember they are in the promised land, but there was still a lot of land, a lot of territory that they needed to conquer that they hadn't conquered. So that's the next step. That's where we're heading.
yeah, within their lands, they haven't driven the folk out,
Right.
Not all the ones. So, and the reason we digress. It was told in a couple different places that wild animals would take over. So
Yeah.
this is kind of part of it until we get to Judges, and Judges is a little bit more to them not being driven out. I did want to
Exactly.
point out real quick. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I found it kind of interesting. It starts out with God is now talking directly to. Well, I say that's my point. He's talking directly with the people. They asked about fighting. God is now talking directly to the people. That's actually verse 1 through 2. And that was interesting. Before, it was a big deal about who can see and who can touch,
Yeah.
taste, but can see and talk to God. So, but I think we learned a little bit down maybe how this comes about, or at least who this person is talking for God. So,
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get into the Judges. They're leaderless, and basically God is going to bring forth some prophets. He's going to let his spirit enter certain people,
yep.
and the judges will be the rulers. So judges, we're thinking of like a guy in a robe that's like sitting around in a trial or something like that. I mean, they do sort of play that role. I know that Moses was the high judge, almost like our Supreme Court, the final say.
Yep.
These guys are more like regional political military leaders. I mean, they are out leading the armies and the battles, and they play a pretty big wide role there.
Well, it's interesting to point that out because they do kind of add some definition of who does what, and some they leave nothing onto it. But yeah, you're right. Judging is more of a leader. I think it's the word in the word too, the translation. But you're right. some of them played a lot of role, like all of them. Some of the judges we'll get into, and some
Yeah.
only played a small role. So, or
And
played
some of
part
these
the role.
judges are far from perfect.
I'd say
All right.
none of them are perfect in my view.
So after Joshua's death, Israel asked the Lord, "Who of us is to go up first and fight the Canaanites?" Lord replies, "The tribe of Judah. I will give them into your hands, the enemy." Judah asked the Simeonites to team up with them. If you help us, basically, we'll help you. So they're planning a battle.
Yep.
God is with them. The first battle is the city of Bezek. 10,000 killed. Adoni-Bezek fled. He must be the king, right?
Odinai, yeah, is that? I thought it was Odinai.
This is what's horrible about the names. I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of them.
No, I'm not criticizing you.
No,
I just
no.
like Odinai.
If you know the pronunciation,
Well, I
let
don't
me
know if I'm right either. I just got Odinai out of it. So, but yeah, there's an interesting side note I'll add to that if you
So
don't
all
have
these
it.
stories are basically the same, right? They have a battle. The king, the leader, flees. They catch up with them. You know, they end up killing them, and they put the city to fire and
Take the spoils, whatever.
take the spoils, kill the people. It's all pretty predictable at this point. All right, so after that, Judah and the, what do you call it, Simeonites?
Seminites, yep. The folks the other tribe that he asked to come fight,
Right.
yes. Yep.
So next
Samnites.
battles, they took the peoples in the foothills, hill country, Hebron, Sheshai, a bunch of other towns I'm not going to even say.
A lot of towns, yep.
Went on to say they're unable to drive the people from the plains because the people on the plains have chariots fitted with iron, 900 chariots fitted with iron.
Yeah, and that was a question I wanted. I mean, so I had for you and for us to discuss a question.
Yeah,
I
God
guess.
was with them. Why?
God was with them, but yeah, that's the interesting thing.
Yeah, I thought that
say
too.
God was with them, so he had a point. Why not to? And I think we kind of learn it down in the chapter later on. God leaves, because you're going to notice a pattern here. As soon as
Yeah.
we get into the judge naming, we're going to notice a pattern. And judge, just before God left people behind because the animals. Well, now I think the people, Israel,
Right.
are the animals. So he's testing them and teaching them with these people because they're not doing what they were told by Moses and Joshua.
Again, for all the detail that's in this book, it doesn't say why they weren't able to. Well, it says because of the chariots, but if God was
Doesn't
with
say
them,
why.
it doesn't say why.
Yeah, that stuck out to me. Is like, well, wait a minute here, So, the interesting. So, around that same area is Clee. I'm trying to read it. An angel speaks. The angel of the Lord comes and talks to them. So that was my point at the beginning. Is they were talking to the Lord. I wonder if it's now through angels. Before they talked, the God talked to like Joshua or Moses.
See, now it's interesting because I'm also wondering when it says an angel of the Lord, is it the Lord?
It's the angel of the Lord. Yeah, because I was questioning that too. But it is. So it's the angels come
Because it
here.
says angel of the Lord to Israel, like you said, he's speaking to all of Israel. Okay, you have disobeyed me. Mm-hmm. Well, that's
So he's speaking God's
right.
just like Moses did, and just like
Okay.
Joshua did. Yeah.
All right,
So
right,
that's
he's-
what I'm saying. So when it starts out
sort
with
of like
God's,
God speaking through him, or
yeah. So again, because I think ever since the God was exposed to Moses, nobody can see him anymore or hear him.
right.
Or it's just the way he chose to do it. But it's interesting. He does speak through. I think angels are his new, whatever you call it. His,
So chapter 1. I mean, some of the cities they were able to conquer, some of the cities they weren't, and then we get into chapter 2, which is the angel of the Lord of Bochum.
yes.
And he says, "You have disobeyed me by allowing Canaanites to live among you. Yes, I will not drive them out." The people wept and offered sacrifice.
They always do something after the fact, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, he said, "I will not drive them out." Unless, but he didn't say that, you know what I mean? The people knew what they had to do to gain favor, and they did it.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to add a verse that I thought was kind of telling. Whenever the Lord raised up, so this is about the judges. We're getting ready. We're not until, chapter 3 is when we get into the naming of the judges. You hear some of them, their names in 2, but he's setting up this, and God is talking to them. Whenever, or it's being paraphrased, I guess. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge, and they saved them out of the hands of their enemies as long as the judge lived. And basically finishing that up, as soon as the judge died, back at it.
Right, chaos again.
I mean, they're going, back to, it's just, so it sounds repetitive, but each story's, it's different in the granularity of it.
Right.
And it's important. I had to read. I read this. I think 4 times, and then even
Yeah.
listened to it tonight almost in entirety through
Right.
the app. Just because there's so much there. It's like I get the big picture, which I'll share at the end if I remember. So, and I digress.
Yeah, and I noticed with the 6 main judges that, you know, they start out pretty good, and then they sort of just the quality of the prophet, the judges sort of declines over time. More sinful with each one.
So I would say that, yeah, well, I don't know if it's in order because we left off with 1 through 12. Chapter 13 is, I think, at least the most notable judge is Samson. So I think that, yeah, you're onto something with there's some that are good or some that are more
yeah,
notorious.
Samson was definitely not the best.
Yeah, but I don't
dude.
think they declined because there's some out of order. Well, I guess you're right because the last few is just like there's like a
That's
a
just sort of my
sentence.
that's sort of my view.
Yeah, I got you. So, and I want to understand your point of view because again, I know I'm not 100% accurate in anything either. So, you're going to start off with the first judge because I have a question on him anyways.
What chapter you in?
3. Oh yeah, we can
Yeah.
let off.
Okay, so the first judge, pronounce it for me.
Othniel.
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 Chapter 3, verse 7, Israel did evil in the eyes of the Lord. The Lord raised up a deliverer. Othniel, Celeb's youngest brother, Spirit of the Lord came upon him and he became a judge. Fought a lot of battles, peace for 40 years, then he died.
So adding to Othniel, he's he is Caleb's nephew.
Oh, I thought it was younger brother.
No, he's the son of Caleb's younger brother.
Okay.
So before they named the judge, they talked about Othniel. He won a little battle for Caleb when he asked him to. That was in chapter 2, I believe. And and he gave his daughter. Caleb gave his daughter in marriage to his nephew.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, Steve and I took different notes, and I tried to skip some stuff that.
Well, no.
you know.
I mean, it's just I found that interesting. I guess we're in old times, but he's
Yeah.
this is first cousin once removed. I think it is. So
Okay.
I thought that was interesting. I mean, it was. So that's what I meant when we'll hear about the judges named. Well, we named the first judge. So go on
Right.
to the second one. The maybe
Chapter 3, verse 12. How do you pronounce it?
I'm going to say Ehud.
Okay. Ehud. Israel, once again evil. Once again they repent. They had been taken over for 18 years by Moab. We've heard of Moab before.
Well,
So Ehud, I thought it was interesting that they mentioned he was left-handed.
yes. Do you know why they mentioned that?
No.
So I cheated a little bit, but it makes sense. So how about I won't give it away until you finish the story.
All right.
It's part
What
of
did
the-
he do to the king of Moab? He was able to defeat him. Israel attacked and killed 10,000 Moabites.
Moabites.
Moabites. They had peace for 80 years.
So
Again,
You-
these are short stories in the Bible. These
with
are the
his
short
notes,
ones.
he paraphrased so I'm going to go back in. So he defeated the king. So he got private audience with him because they searched him. He's left-handed. I guess that time was very rare. So a left-handed person would carry his weapon on a different part of his body.
Oh, okay.
So when they searched him, they apparently are lazy
Oh.
searchers. So
They didn't think to check.
they
where
didn't
he
check
had it.
his. They didn't check his. I guess his right inner thigh or something.
One of his
where-
thighs, yeah.
Yeah, well, the thigh that he would reach with his left hand, and he was able to get a private audience, which they think is the bathhouse, and I'm only getting that. It was a private room, but it does make a little bit of sense from what the Bible for Dummies says about that. But what he did is he got him into the room, and he locked the door behind him and plunged the sword in him, and apparently the king was fat, really
Yeah.
fat. And it disappeared. And they said the fat sucked it in, and his
Yeah.
blood, and his guts were spilled, I guess. So they call it the dirt was spilled, and I think that's where they got he was in a private bath because he did sneak out. They did mention him sneaking
Yep.
out. So,
He
but
was
yeah,
able to get
that's
away.
basically it. So I was trying to the first couple times I'm left-handed.
Right.
So
Yeah, I didn't get that.
yeah, I mean, we could be wrong. Maybe that thing's wrong. So.
I like it. But they did mention it was left-handed.
Yep.
Shamgar, chapter 3, verse 31, struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. And I actually looked that up. It's a long stick with a pointed end.
And we will probably put it up over this little thing. I'll put a little picture of it because Yeah, I had to search for it too. What's an ox goad?
He saved
give me an
Israel.
ox goad.
And he died.
So further defining it, ox goad actually had a purpose. It's kind of like Chinese weaponry. Oh, sorry, Japanese weaponry. It was farm tools. So this was a farm tool used to
Yeah.
poke and prod the cattle to get them moving. So
Okay. Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Deborah. Female.
yes,
I
a
love
lady.
it.
Deborah has
I mean,
two
how
ladies.
long ago was this written, for gosh sakes?
Long time
Before
ago.
Christ, and we have a female prophet.
Yes,
That's awesome.
prophet slash.
Now
yeah,
we're in
she's
the
a
chapter
prophet
4.
and in a leader. She
Once
was-
again, Israel sinned under the hand of Jabin, the king of Canaan, for 20 years. The leader of the Canaan army was Sisera. He had 900 chariots fitted with iron. So that must have been who they were talking about before. Israel cried out for help. So, chapter 4, verse 4. Deborah was a prophet. She was called. She was actually leading Israel, is what it said.
Yep. Yeah, she was the next judge.
So she had a guy named Barak.
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 Barak. Barak.
How do we know Barak, or don't we?
I don't.
She went to Barak and said, "The Lord commands you to take 10,000 men to Saint Tabor. I'll lead Sisera and his troops to Kishon River and give them into your hands." But he talked her out of it for some reason. They went ahead to say, "Well, you know what? I think you should come with me," is what he said. So she went with him. And she said, chapter 4, verse 4, Deb to Barak, "Go, this day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" So the Lord is with them. They're going into battle
Yes.
against this general of
The
an army.
the Philistines. I'm sorry, it wasn't the Philistines. Sorry, go ahead.
Who was it? I forgot already.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it mentioned, because I was looking at Shamgar was the
Jabin,
Philistine.
king of Canaan.
Canaanites. You said that. Sorry, Canaanites. Yes. Go ahead. My bad.
That's
I
all right.
interrupted
So
the
the Lord
man.
is with them. He led 10,000 men down the mountain and killed the enemy. Sisera fled to a tent. So, of course, the leader gets away again, right? And he's going to a person that he has an alliance with, or a country that he has an alliance with. All right? So he goes to the wife of Heber the Canaanite. Again, they had an alliance. He shows up and says, "Oh, I'm thirsty and tired. Can you give me a drink?" And she said, "Well, why don't you go over to the opening of the tent and relax there?" Well, you end up falling asleep. And what did she do?
She was bad. Not in a way
Yeah,
that we
obviously
think
it
today.
wasn't. Obviously, she wasn't that good of. They didn't have that great of an alliance.
Well, they weren't adversaries, but they were meant to be comrades, I guess. But yeah, she grabbed while he's sleeping, grabbed the tent spike and stabbed him in the head and killed him.
Right through to the dirt. It said.
Second woman,
Yeah,
she's actually So go ahead. I don't want to see your glory. You're on a roll.
that's it. He was destroyed.
So
And-
so interesting too because he stumbled across them. He was hiding. He got dumb luck. He figured he's safe. I'm found an ally, I guess was the way to put it. And
Sure, yeah, sure. So he was relaxed.
So-
he walks in. "Oh, I'm tired and hungry, and okay, we'll
So
take care of
he
you."
thought.
He thought he could relax.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. That was such a big book because the whole next book was the Song of Deborah. But
Song of Deborah.
But the interesting thing is, I don't, again, one of those songs that the rhythm or the words don't make sense. The song, they'd have to sing it. But it does give a lot of praise at the end, more so to Jael, who was the lady that killed the king.
It's the entire chapter, Song of Deborah. It said that Deborah and Barak sang it. And now we're going to take a moment to let Steve sing it for you.
Yeah. But it's interesting too because she was a Canaanite, I believe, or ally of the Canaanite. Jael was, and part of the songs about boasting about her own people being pillaged after losing. So that was an interesting thing.
Okay.
So, for what it's worth, we shall continue to another
Chapter
one.
6, we're on to another prophet, Gideon. This was a very detailed chapter, okay? So, again, Israel's even 7 years in the hands of the
Midianites.
Midianites. So, they were really oppressive. They would, Israel would plant their crops and try to get things ready for harvest so that they could make it through the winter or whatever. And then the Midianites would come along and pretty much just pillage and take whatever they want and destroy whatever they want and leave the Israelites with nothing.
Kind of, what would be the word for it? Ramscallions, or what is that? What is that
Sounds
word?
good. I like it.
I don't know, probably a made up word, but yeah, these people did stuff just to do stuff.
So what did Israel do? They cried out for help.
Of course,
They're good at that.
they cried out for help, and in this case, they you're on a roll. I'm gonna let you go.
Chapter
I'll add
6, verse 12 to the 16. Angel of the Lord appears to Gideon and says, and said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Now Gideon was considered himself a kind of a wimp, a weakling.
of his family, let alone the Gileads or
Right.
the tribe he's with. They were
Didn't
they
have-
were the subsect of the major tribe, which I
Weakest
forgot.
tribe.
They were the weakest tribe. So yeah, you're what?
Yeah, like, why
Hello?
me?
I mean, here. Okay, so to add some more, I'm going to bring this back a little bit. So the Midianites come down and destroy their crops, and anybody they killed and beat up, and all the animals, the donkeys, everything. And here's God coming to the angel of the Lord again, coming to Gideon, and what is Gideon doing? He's threshing wheat, not on the hill where the wind can throw the chaff, as they call it, out in the open, like I guess everybody did. I don't know, my generation didn't do that, but he's in the wine press doing it so the Midianites don't see him. He's a coward. Well, I don't know if he's a coward. He's smart.
I think he's a coward.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely he professes that, or you know.
Right.
So, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was almost like, he didn't have a lot of faith, not only in himself, but just the fact that he wanted proof
That this was God talking.
that this
to him.
was God talking to him, right? And you'll see as we get along, he asks for, he wants proof, basically.
Yeah.
Now, this was interesting too. So, he's telling him that you're going to be this mighty warrior, right? You're going to lead in a great battle. I will be with you.
Yes.
And he says, Gideon worried because he saw the Lord's face. Because they had been told before that if you see the Lord's face, you would die.
Yes.
And he said, do not be afraid. The Lord's angel said, do not be afraid. You are not going to die.
So repeat that. The Lord, the angel. You just
He said, peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die.
yeah, but didn't he say the angel said that to him? The angel of the Lord said
The
that to
angel of
him.
the Lord said it to
So
him.
that's the confusing part, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah.
Because if it is an angel of the Lord and God speaking through him, it's not.
Which is his
Directly
messenger.
God,
I
but-
mean, I think we'll see that many times in the Bible. So now,
Okay.
ever since he left the tabernacle and the travel,
And it could just be Gideon's nature. He thought, oh,
yeah. Well, so he learned some of the stories, right? In the
Right.
presence of the Lord, you're going to die. But yeah, but he also, for somebody who, so he goes from that to testing or asking for proof that it's God.
right.
So maybe because he says you're not going to die is why he said, okay, well, normally you die. So
Right. Exactly. Right. So he built an altar and he named it The Lord is Peace. Chapter 6, 25, verse 25 through 26. The Lord commanded Gideon to tear down his father's altar to Baal, which is the god of
Baal, yeah.
the god of the
I think he's the agricultural crops. And stuff.
Canaanites, correct? I mean, he's a Canaanite
Oh,
god.
he's the god of like Ammonites, Canaanites, all the people that were there. He was one of the
Right.
gods. There's Asher and Baal.
Cut down the Asherah pole also. So he was, again, because he was a coward, he went at night with 10
Servants,
helpers or
yeah.
servants or whatever, and he did it at
Yeah.
night, right? And he also built a proper kind of altar. The Lord asked him to build a proper kind of altar. When the town came and asked his father, why did, we got to put Gideon, why do you let Gideon get away with this? We got to put him to death. And the father defends Gideon's actions.
I like his response. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically said, well, go ahead. I'm kind of lost with that.
So he basically, so the theory is these guys are worshiping other lords, and historically, anytime anybody crossed our God, eventually God took care of it. In these cases, he's taking care of it. So his father, Gideon's father, says, "Well, let Baal take care of Baal's problems. If he is truly a god, let him do it." So
Yeah.
therefore, the name they gave the name to Gideon.
Jerubbaal.
Jerubbaal, which means let Baal
Let
deal
Baal,
with it.
yeah, let Baal contend with him.
Yeah.
Let Baal contend with him.
Yeah, and Baal's
Yeah.
here's since we're going to get into that some other stuff down the road with another prophet. Remember, Baal is one of the I'm not certain how it comes into it, but I think human sacrifice was what Baal, sex and stuff. It was a lot of nasty stuff.
Okay.
So this is why God is upset with these people, because they keep turning to it. So, I digress.
Chapter 6, verse 34, the Spirit of the Lord came on Gideon. He gathered a bunch of Israelites, and he got them ready. He readied them for war. Yeah, so this is where he's sort of like asking God for an answer. You know, if you're really with me, I'm gonna put a fleece out
Yeah, sheepskin or whatever.
out on the ground outside my tent, and when I get up in the morning, if it's wet and the ground is dry, I'll know that you're with me. And he gets up the next day, and it's exactly that way. Yeah, he rings it
He
out.
rings it out. So that
wasn't good enough,
One,
though.
that's one.
Then
One
he's like,
test.
you know what? I'm sorry to ask you more, but
Don't be mad at me.
excuse me, Lord, but if you could, I'll put the fleece back out and leave that dry, but make the ground wet. Then I'll know you're with me. And he gets up the next morning, and it is so.
Hoorah. So is he believing now? But again, these people, I think there's a pattern here.
There's still some doubt, but we're in the chapter 7. And it's titled, Gibeon defeats the...
Midianites.
Thank you. So he brought 20,000 men. He brought 20,000 men.
22,000.
22,000?
Yeah, because I wrote the same thing down, but
All right.
I had it corrected because I'm like, wait, I heard 22. So maybe we're wrong. I'll correct it.
Yeah, comment, let us know.
Yeah, but it's funny because I'm like, I had 20, so sorry.
I only went through the chapters like
10
7 times. You know,
Yeah.
you think I would have gotten it right. So the Lord had Gideon send most of the troops back home, and they did various tests and stuff to decide who was going to go back home. Do you want to get into that, or?
Well, I want to set it up because there's a reason for this. So God says, wait, if you send all these people into battle, 20 or 22,000, where you have to see, they're going to be arrogant and said it was our strength that did it, not God's. So yeah, I think it's important. So I'll share this.
Yeah, definitely, because that totally went out of my head. I was thinking something else. The test that they had to do. That's what I was saying.
It wasn't really test.
That's a good point, though.
Yeah, well, God said you need to thin the herd. So
Yeah.
so God says, ask the folks who's afraid to go into battle. You can go home. And
That was a bunch right there.
so yeah, that was so I will. This is where I got the 22,000. So you could have been right. It might have been said 20, but 22,000 left then. And apparently that was still too many. So God told them to go down to the river, the river, I believe it was. Take them to the water. So it didn't say. And this is what was confusing to me. Those who kneel over, take the ones that lap like dogs. So not the ones that bow down on their knees and drink.
and cup.
So the ones that bowed on their knees didn't lap like dogs, which would make sense. The ones that lap like dogs are the ones that cup the water and lap, And then for whatever reason, God told them to take those, which happened to be how many?
300.
300 of them. So
See, now read and let us know, because I thought it was the opposite. I thought people stuck their face in the water and lapped, but some cupped and drank that way.
so that's interesting. So the good thing. I mean, again, like the numbers, I read.
Who
a
would
bunch-
do that? Who would?
That
lap
makes
like a
no
dog?
sense. Well, that's why. I mean,
And those are the ones that were chosen.
exactly. And I read it so many times that if I'm wrong,
I know,
mean,
I know.
seriously.
So we'll have to go
Oh
back
my
and look
goodness.
afterwards.
gracious.
So, okay, so we got down to 300 men. Now it's nighttime. They're camping outside of the enemy, away from the enemy. The enemy doesn't know they're there. This is chapter 7, verse 9. At night, the Lord said to Gideon, if you're afraid still, I need you to go down to camp, and on the outskirts of camp, there's going to be guards and whatnot. Just sneak down there and listen to the guards.
Listen to the stories, yeah.
Yeah, listen to the stories and see what they have to say. So he had somebody come with him, and in a soldier recounts a dream that he had to a fellow soldier about
Like a loaf of bread or something.
a big loaf of bread rolling through camp and destroying everybody, and basically how afraid they were and stuff like that. So he was really jazzed up after that, basically. So he goes back up to camp, rouses the troops, forms the 300 men into 3 companies, hands everybody trumpets and empty jars. They have the torches inside the jars.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. So I got to keep rereading. Empty jars with torches in it. So
Yeah, circled the camp. They went back down. They went down, snuck down. They circled the camp. They smashed the jars and said they held the torches up with one hand and blew the trumpet with the other and yelled, "A sword for the Lord and Gideon."
So is Randy gonna go Randy on this one? Did you gonna go deep on this one?
No.
I'm gonna go deep. I'm gonna go deep on Randy on this one.
You got time?
We have time. We have time. We're actually making good time. We don't. I'm not gonna drag on too much. But so for the Lord and for Gideon,
It said two different things. Did you know that?
what they said was different as well. But they both
Yep.
emphasized it wasn't just for the Lord; it was for Gideon. So the deep dive is when Randy brought that out in the last book, how they were, well, a couple times when they hit the rock,
Yeah.
God put Moses and Aaron to death, and then Joshua did something too. So
Good one.
So-
Took me a while to get what you're saying there. Okay, because, and I didn't actually write that one down, but they said you're supposed to yell this, and
Yeah.
it was for the Lord.
yes, well, that's what they were supposed to say.
Right?
You said the Lord. Well, I don't. So they were supposed to shout. They didn't define it until he said what he was supposed to do. So I'm going to assume God didn't tell him to say "and for Gideon." Maybe he did. So maybe the deep dive was just my ignorance. Sorry.
Okay,
but-
so that's a great one to look up because there was something that they were supposed to say, it was written down, but then when it came actual time to say it, they said something different. Okay, so I'm not remembering exactly what that was.
Yeah, they said something like here's an arrow or sword for.
Right. And again, this is book 7, and I don't have I'm sorry, this is chapter 7, right around verse, I'd say 10 or 11. That's where you want to look that up. Now it's interesting. So the troops are waking up, obviously, and the Lord has confused them. They're turning on each other.
And they're fighting each
Yeah,
other.
they're stabbing each other. I mean, Gideon and his troops did not have to actually pick up swords and fight. They were fighting themselves, and then the ones that didn't fight fled.
Yep. And then they were pursued and segueing you into chapter 8.
Right, and actually Gideon then ended up sending messengers to gather more men to pursue the fleeing enemy. He captured the leaders. Again, leaders are always the last to go, right? Oreb and Zeb. They were Midianite princes,
Yeah.
and he killed them.
So that was it was interesting because I'm gonna have to reread it. Comment. Randy's probably right. Well, I'm not. Yeah. I thought that so he gets in an argument with when he's pursuing the other two, the kings, which is Zeba.
Sure, when he caught him, right.
Before that's the princes. Now he's after the kings, Zeba and Zuma. He crossed the Jordan looking for them. He got in a fight with people of, the Amorites. Not the Amorites, but I think it's the Amorites. Why didn't you help us? And so, but anyways, so I thought
Yeah, there's a whole
he had
extra
a whole
story
thing on
there.
that. And my point is, if because I
Yeah.
do have one, is I thought I thought somebody else killed them. So you might be right. Maybe I'll have to miss that because again, I'm going to emphasize this
Well,
again.
and I
there's
also said,
detail.
they were captured and killed. I didn't necessarily say that it was by.
Well, you
Gideon.
implied it was Gideon, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
you're wrong. I didn't get
Honestly,
that.
don't know if
So,
it was.
Yeah, well, because the argument that comes on later on is hey, you God delivered those two into your hands.
Yeah.
And Gideon was talking. I'll reference that into the video here. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, go ahead.
Again, there's no way we can read it word for word. So,
Oh.
so we're skipping a lot, but you can see we're also telling a lot. But there's a lot of fine details in there that you're going to see for yourself.
Yep.
So we get to chapter 8. Say it for me. Zeba. Zalmunna.
Zeba and Zalmunna,
All right. These are two
the
kings.
Midian kings that they pursued. They're the ones that escaped.
Ephraimites are upset with Gideon for not asking them to join the battle.
That's what I just talked about. Now, sorry for interrupting.
This is
Randy.
where
The
we're at?
Ephraimites, yes.
Ephraimites.
Yes.
Okay, so we're at chapter 8, verse 2. Gideon says, "What have I accomplished compared to you?" Now you have to remember too, Gideon has a nickname. So as you're reading the Bible, they sometimes call him by
Jerubbaal.
right. So if you're reading Jerubbaal, they're actually meaning it is
Did
Gideon.
you write the word? Did you get the verse down for that one?
Yeah, verse 2.
Okay,
8
so
verse 2.
8 verse 2. Sweet, because that's the exact verse I was telling you about. So continue on.
So he says, "What have I accomplished compared to you?" And what he's basically saying is, God gave the Midianites leaders into their hands. They've accomplished much.
God gave those two we just mentioned.
So he's basically like, well, let me have an accomplishment, you know?
Yeah.
Plus he went on and say, well, you have better grapes.
Well, yeah. Well, he was giving the guy props. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, you glean from your field is more than my whole people can do,
Yeah.
and our whole crop. So we're talking the gleaning.
You've had victories. Let me have a victory. All is good. And that did appease them. There was no battle.
And that's the point I was making. And in that chapter or in that verse is when he talked about those two princes that were delivered to him.
Right.
So now he's like, hey, I'm
Yeah, because we do have in this book, you will see tribes fighting tribes.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the first of it. Well, I don't know if it's the first of it. Well, sure, it certainly is on the scale that it is. I mean, so we shall move on.
So it says Gideon and his 300 men are exhausted, but they kept up the pursuit. Again, we're in chapter 8. Along the way, okay, so they killed the leaders, but they're still chasing men.
So they're chasing the so they killed the princes, I think, or whatever. They killed two important people, but not the
Princess. Gotcha.
Other. So I think they're still
They're still after the kings.
pursuing the kings. Yeah.
Okay, so
They crossed over.
as they're pursuing, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they're passing by a town. And all the towns that they passed by, without going into detail, maybe you want to, all the towns said, no, why should we give you bread and water? You want to?
Yeah, I'll add to it. We have another 10, 15 minutes to chat. Why not? Because this is what it's about. I mean, if it takes 4 hours, it takes 4 hours, but we're going to keep it under an hour. So what happened was, so they're passing past Succoth. Well, that was horrible. No.
Beer's gone.
Succoth is that's the first tribe they passed, and they basically like said, no, I'm not going to feed you. You probably already have them. So he said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to torch you with thorns. And then he goes past Peniel, I think is another town, and they said the same.
8 verse 9.
Yeah. So now they did capture the king finally. And then on their way back, they basically did what they're going to say. They punished the two tribes that said, and these are their own people.
Yeah.
You know, they're Israelites. I think they're on the other side of the Jordan. But they did do exactly, they did some harsh things. I mean, the people of Succoth, they just tortured them like they said they would with the thorns. But the people of Peniel, they pulled the tower down and they killed all the men. So that was pretty serious. So
they have the two kings. He questions them, and they have a little argument. You know, these guys are proud, right? They know what's coming, so they're standing up proud, right? And then Gideon asks his son Jether to kill them, and the kings were like, "Whoa, wait a minute! You know, that's not an honorable way to die." I'm just sort of like getting in their heads at this point. They don't say that, but the kid was actually afraid to do it, so he didn't do it. Yeah. And the kings were like, "Why don't you do it yourself? Be a man. You know what I mean? Do it yourself." So that's more of an honorable death. To have a great warrior. Can you imagine if a little kid killed them both? That's how they would go down in history. I think that they think that, you know. A little kid killed a king.
Well, I think that they were testing him because they knew of him being weak beforehand, right? Because that's why they fought with him. So my thought is they thought he was weak, and he just said, okay. He didn't hesitate. He killed him.
Right.
So but that's what I got.
So the boy wouldn't do it. Yeah, I don't know why he wanted his boy to do it. They didn't really say in the detail. I mean, maybe he thought, it's time for you to grow up, kid. Or he didn't want to do it himself. Then it went on to say that he took the ornaments off their camels' necks. Must have been some nice ornaments.
Well, I think
they're probably
rich.
Gold and more spoils.
Yeah, because he did ask, so you're going to go into about so you know about the spoils he asked for, right?
Yes.
And did he ask that he asked that of the people they conquered, or was it it was the people he conquered, or was it, no, it wasn't. It was of his tribe that helped him.
I believe it was from his tribe, yeah.
Yeah. And what did he ask for?
Yeah, so.
Hearing. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, I'm going to get into 8 verse 22. The Israelites asked Gideon to rule over them. He said, we want you to rule over us. We want your son and your grandson to eventually rule over us. And he replied, verse 23, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. God will rule over you. And then he requested an earring from each of them from the share of the plunder. Yeah, so it's a share of the plunder from all the men that were there.
He said, but I would ask you to share, because he was busy killing people, because God gave him and his 300 men the ability to do it.
Yeah.
He did the lion's share from what I understand. So
now I looked up like why earrings, and it said that it was because the people that they conquered, the men and everybody, were known for wearing earrings.
That's what I got as well. We Googled the same.
What did he do with that plunder?
I thought it was bizarre, but it shows
This is where he goes off course, big time.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it kind of it's in with the chapter or the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. He makes an ephod with it, which is the the garb that they wear. He makes that out of gold, and then he hangs it in his hometown, like Ophrah.
It becomes an idol of worship.
Yeah, they call them prostitute themselves to it, and that is one of the snares God left for the people because.
What made him do it?
And the interesting thing, so this is after I don't think they worship. Well, it didn't say, but when he died is when they really started worshiping it too. And that's the story. Is they're great, they're fine, they repent, they get their judge, aka leader, and then they're in peace again. And then as soon as they die, it's like back to the drawing board or back to the evil, And that's it's just mind-boggling.
Circle.
Repetitive, yeah.
Just a complete circle, never ends. It says Gideon returns home. Now Gideon has 70 sons, and he also had a wife, a bunch of wives.
Yeah,
But he also had one concubine, which I don't know why he wouldn't just marry her. But and the concubine had a kid named Abimelech.
Abimelech, awesome, good job, Randy.
Chapter 8, verse 32. Gideon dies of a good old age and buried in his father's tomb. They did have 40 years of peace.
Yes.
Soon after, Israel turns to Baal Berith as their god.
Baal Berith.
What did this god ever do for them? Nothing.
Well, so interesting.
They're easy to brainwash for some reason.
I keep looking at it too, and looking at different things, and I saw a couple of videos again. So this is additional commentary, but it's intriguing why they keep going back to this, and I think it's the common sin of the flesh we have today. That religion was really, even when in Exodus, or was it Leviticus or Numbers, when they were going to go have sex in Aaron's son, not Aaron's son, but Aaron's son's, no, it was Aaron's son, stabbed him and
Got yourself
was
in a
going to
trap
kill.
here, buddy.
Well, no, he killed the people
Bring it
going
up.
in there. So sex is a big part of it. It's part of the religion is sex. So I
Yeah.
think people with little constitution,
And they're
really
weak.
follow that. Yeah,
They're weak. And they were told, if you don't drive out all the Canaanites, you're going to keep going back to their ways. So,
And yeah, God stopped helping him drive them out. He was leaving them there because, we did kind of skip over stuff, and I don't want to make it too much longer.
Yep.
Is the fact that he left the tribes there, so these people were a generation that didn't see or know the Lord or the battles and the strives they went through. So this is hardening them to learn how to fight because they have to. They're spread out in nations. They're across the promised land, and that's part of their demise. Well, I'm assuming demise because they're not going in a good direction. So with that, let's get on to Abimelech.
that's right, chapter 9. He is the youngest of Gideon's sons. Is that correct?
If it reads it, it does. I didn't catch it. I know
I might be wrong on that.
So
hold
he was
that thought for a second. There was
wasn't.
another brother that was youngest that escaped.
Jotham.
Okay.
Jotham's the youngest.
He was, Abimelech is the one that, did we already say he had to flee?
Not yet. You're about to. He was born to the concubine, so the other brother
Okay.
said, "We don't want you. You're not getting inheritance because you're not of our mother." So you brought up also wives. I think, wow, this is hard to think of, but apparently 69 of, or 70, if there's 70 brothers, if that's total or including him, his
Right.
poor mother. Just saying. Go on. I digress.
You know what? I'm going to have you go on because I'm wondering if I skipped something here.
All right. Well, I mean, I would say, so he's
Because he was driven out. He was told that he needed to leave because they didn't want him to inherit anything from his father,
Yep.
basically.
Yeah,
you have
so-
a different mother, so get out of here.
Yep. And I might oversimplify too, but yeah, he's a concubine. 70 of the brothers, they wanted
Okay.
him to rule. Okay, so he went up and he asked the people of.
Okay.
He asked the people, hey, do you want 70 brothers? So he was a conniving dude. Do you want 70 brothers or do you want me? And they convinced. So he asked the citizens of Shechem. I think that's how you say it.
Yep.
Would you want 70 of us or one? And they're like, oh, we want one. So he's like, told his brothers, and they're like, oh, okay. Then he killed them all, but one. That was Jotham, who went up to the top of the mountain. And then Jatham basically said, "This dude's crazy. If you want him, and yada
He
yada."
was the
yada.
younger brother,
Yeah, Jatham
the
was
only one that survived.
the only one of the 70 brothers outside of Abimelech. So yeah, so this guy's pretty nasty, dude. He rolled over the 3 years, until God stirred trouble with Gael.
Yep.
He's apparently a neighboring tribe, son of Ebed. And they moved in, and he's like, I don't care who this Abimelech is, so I'm going to cause
Yeah.
problems.
Don't you want me as your leader?
Yep. Then he fought a lot of people, and he pursued. I think he pursued Ebed's tribe from town to town, in basically just in anger after him. And I'll get to the point on it real quick. He was a bully and mean guy and killed his own brothers, and then he pursued this enemy that God threw in there to make trouble with him.
Yep.
And in the meantime, they're in the tower, and this girl rolls a stone over it, another lady, and it hits him in the head, cracks his skull, and he says, "Hurry up!" One of his warriors said, "Kill me before this woman gets credit of killing me." I thought that was
Yeah, there's another example. It's not an honorable way to die.
yeah, they're exactly right. So he's dead.
Want to say this real quick, though. The youngest brother that lived out of the 70, what town did he flee to?
Tob?
Beer.
Beer.
B-E-E.
Tob's the next.
R.
Yeah, which you're out of. You need
How
a
you like
BWEWRUN. So we are almost there. We are on to
Yep.
Tola.
Tola.
He was after 23 years of peace. I think he's one of the. So he was, and then him and Jer. That's another one. Basically, as we talked about in the beginning, some major and minors, or lesser and more important ones. Well,
Yeah,
these
they
two-
really don't give. You
Yeah.
know, it's just short little. Hey, his name was Jer, and we had led for 22 years, and we had peace. He had 30 sons,
That was-
controlled 30 towns.
Yeah, and they rode 30 donkeys.
Little descriptions.
Yeah, 30 donkeys. So I'm like, okay, whoo, big
Yep.
deal. I'm assuming it meant something back then, but holy mackerel. How much little information can you get on
Then
these
you
two?
get the Jephthah. So we're at chapter 10, verse 6.
Yeah.
So again, the Israelites are serving other gods. God forsake them. And for 18 years they were oppressed. They cried out to God again and said, chapter 10, verse 14, "Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them save you." Oh, I like that.
Yep.
So what did they do? They got rid of those foreign gods quick.
They quickly destroyed them.
And they cried out again. And God, of course, relented and
Of course.
came back to them.
He keeps coming back. So, I mean, that's his message. So, go ahead.
Yep, the Amorites were called to arms, camped in Gilead, and the Israelites camped at Misphit. So chapter 10, verse 18, the leaders of Gilead said, "Whoever will take the lead in attacking the Ammonites will be head over all who lives in Gilead." So they're going to search for a new leader here, right?
Yes.
Whoever leads the way. Jephthah was a mighty warrior. His father, Gilead, mother was a prostitute.
So, we're in chapter 11 now, right?
Chapter 11.
He fled to Tob. Or not he, but yes.
That's true. See, this is what I was thinking of. This is actually, this is an order. Now we're learning about him when he had to flee, like when he was a young man, right? Or am I lost here? Maybe I'm thinking
Well,
about
so
somebody
it was
else.
like the beginning when we heard of Onthiel. I forgot his name.
Yeah. That's what. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Amalek. Okay, so this is a whole different dude.
Yep, this is Jephthah. Yep. But we did hear about Jephthah before we heard he was going to be. So he was mentioned in 10.
Okay, so this is not part of the 70 brothers, right?
Nope, he's another one. This is after.
Mother was a
their
prostitute.
sons.
That's what threw me off.
Yep.
And
Another prostitute. Yep. And that's why
Gilead's wife had many sons. Okay. When he was grown, they drove him away.
Okay.
That's the one they drove away.
Okay, so I'm gonna retract. So I'm sorry. I apologize. I confused Randy.
That's
It
the one they
was
drove away.
not
Okay.
Abimelech.
Yeah.
It was Jephthah.
Okay.
That was the prostitute, and his brothers drove him away.
Brother said, "You're not going to get any inheritance," but I thought you were onto something there. I thought that was the right one. So again, a lot of detail, a lot of people. And that's why we're doing this.
And this is why we're doing this, yes. Because now, not only I'm going to reread it, and then I'm going to watch the video
Yep.
and edit it. So
So he took off. He settled in Tob, where a gang of scoundrels followed him. So he was like a gang leader, basically,
Oh,
at
yeah.
that point. So the Ammonites in Israel were fighting, and the elders of Israel sent for Jephthah. be our commander. But I thought you hated me. You drove me away. They offered him to be their leader.
Yep.
And he said, will you really let me be your leader? Or are you just saying that? They said, no, we'll do it.
Yeah. And I thought there was a hidden agenda, but yeah.
He accepted.
Yep.
So the Ammonites wanted their land back from Israel. So you got to remember, there's battles going on. Israel came in when they first took over the land, right? And God drove out those people, and now they want their land back.
Well, that's what Jephthah said. He sent a messenger when they asked him to be leader. He said, "Hey, he's a smart guy." He says, "Hey, go send a messenger and find out what he wants." They returned saying, "Hey, you took our lands," and then he corrected them. And
This
said,
is also one of the lands where the king would not let them pass through the land.
Exactly.
Now, some leaders will let them pass through, and some wouldn't.
Well, that's what he replied back. He said, "Look, because you didn't let us here and didn't let us there, God
Yeah.
let us take this over from you. So God took it, not us, because of what
That's
you
right.
did."
That's right. Don't blame us. God took it. You take what your God has given you,
But it was
and we do the same.
his country's actions, his area's actions is why it happened. So it wasn't like they came in and just said, "Get out," like he's doing to them.
Chapter 11, verse 29, the Lord came over Jephthah, and he traveled to advance on the Ammonites. So this was a battle that was destined to be. So he made a vow to the Lord. Chapter 10, verse 30 through 31. If you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Amorites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. He's offering a sacrifice, which is what the Canaanites would do. A sacrifice. They don't sacrifice. The Lord does not want you to sacrifice.
It's still they do still burn offerings and stuff. So that's what he's saying. But the important thing is, and this is
But what does he think is going to come out the door?
Well-
a dog?
that was an interesting question. I mean, because that's important. So we'll get to that. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what would you think was going to come out your door when you're returning from battle? Who can open a door? A human being.
That's assuming there's a door, and door's vague. So
And why
I'll
didn't he say
elaborate.
something like, I won't eat chocolate for a year? Or,
Exactly.
all right. I lost my place here.
So go ahead. You mentioned about is there sacrifice, and so you're going to,
Okay.
you know,
So when he came home, his only child.
and I want to correct you. It was 11:30, not 10:30. So
Okay. When he came home, his only daughter came walking out the door, and he said, "Oh no, my daughter!" This is chapter 11, verse 35. "Oh no, my daughter, you've brought me down, and I am devastated. I have made a vow to the Lord I cannot break." Again, who did he think was going to walk out the door?
So finishing that up real quick, and they'll get back into this. His daughter's like, "I know what you promised, and just let me go to the country and
Yeah,
celebrate
she was
my
sort of
friends because I'm not going to get married."
She was sort of at ease with it. Or
But we know
I think she had amazing faith. We
she
shouldn't
had
say
well,
that,
she
but-
had amazing faith because a couple things. I brought up Baal. Baal did sacrifice humans. It was actually frowned upon, and it was absolutely forbidden to do human sacrifice. So there's no way that God is going to tell him. It doesn't
Right.
elaborate on it, but we have to know that God, just like Abraham and Isaac, you did not sacrifice his daughter. But you're right. What would come out of the house? In today's day and age, we would not think an animal. I did read in the Bible for Dummies, back then it was common to have animals walking around.
Well,
their house was a bigger shelter. Like,
Probably curtains, if they even had anything there, right? Not a door handle, and okay.
and it could have been the house is like the main area.
Yeah,
that
you're
you
right.
come
They had
into.
animals and
Yes.
houses. And,
Yeah.
oh,
Well, it wasn't the
man.
house that we know it
What a
today.
thing to say, though.
Correct. Well, I mean, it was he was lifting up and praising to God. I'm going to give you the first thing that came. He doesn't care,
Right.
but it's his daughter, and he's going to go through with it. So I really, so
Yeah.
anyhow,
And I don't know if they still do it to this day, but they have a tradition.
those
Chapter
4 days.
11, verse 40. Every year, young women go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite.
The Gileadite.
Thank you. Chapter 12, last chapter. Jephthah and Ephraim. Ephraim forces confronted Jephthah. Now you have to remember what we said. They're fighting each other
Yep,
at this
they're-
point. Upset that they were not asked to fight the Ammonites. We already had a group that was like that.
Another one.
Now he said, I did call you and you didn't come to help.
Yeah.
So the Lord gave me victory. Now you came today to fight me? You Gileadites are renegades from Ephraim and Manasseh. So they fought the Gileadites and struck them down. They captured the fords
On the Jordan. Yep.
on the Jordan. You know what the fords are? It's the ability to be crossed by foot. It's an area
Yep.
shallow enough.
I know now.
When the survivors came and crossed over, now these are survivors of
Ephraim.
Ephraim, right.
Well, so we know that, but they were
Yep.
testing them because they were killing
Yep.
them because these people called them bad. So and they were fighting them.
So they would ask him to say a word.
Shibboleth.
There you go. And I guess they had, different accents in these different
Yeah, they didn't pronounce
tribes,
it the
right?
same.
If you couldn't pronounce it correctly, you were killed.
So if you said
42,000 in
Sibboleth
total.
instead of Shibboleth, see ya, bye bye, sayonara, no for you.
Chapter 12, verse 7. Jephthah led 6 years, and then he was gone.
Yep. He was gone. And then talk about the lesser. I mean, literally, the end of 12 is
Yeah. Just mentions names.
Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon. And this is why we'll wrap it up with this real quick, and you can add to it. Is the most was a sentence and a half. Ibzan led for 7 years, had 30 sons and daughters. He gave his daughters away and brought daughters in so they can marry. Then Elon was the shortest. And, yeah, exactly. They're not supposed to go with the people, the local people.
Burying the Canaanites.
And then Elon led 10 years, nothing else. Okay.
Yep.
And then Abdon led 8 years, but he had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode 70 donkeys.
Yeah, donkey for each one.
Donkey! Donkey. So
Thank
and
you for
that-
bearing with us on this. I tell you what, this was the toughest one for me.
So it was tough because there's so much stuff in such a little space.
lot.
And at the big point is they're on their own. They're in the promised land and they're failing
Yeah.
like you cannot believe. I mean, it's repetitive.
Yeah.
Repetitive.
It did. I
Why?
sort of wrote down this cycle, if I can find it real quick. Let me see.
Well, they get yeah. While he's doing it, I'll paraphrase it even more. Is like they worship and do the wrong evil, and God lets some other people take them over and kind of enslave them.
Yeah. This
Then they-
cycle. They sin, they're oppressed, they repent, they're delivered, a judge is sent, and then there's peace. And then it starts all over again. There you have
That's
it.
the way better. So
So next time, we're going to start with chapter 13. That is with the prophet Samson.
Samson and
Which is kind of exciting. He's an interesting character. So
yeah,
I think
he's
we'll have
an
fun.
important one. He's most people know of him. Yeah,
Yes.
and so again, thank you for joining along with us.
Like, subscribe, share. We appreciate you so much.
Comment, please. Comment. We have lots of stuff, and I'm going to toast Randy into the next video with an empty beer. Is that all right? Of course it is. But
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Little drop there.
Oh.